I'm about to go do some forestry, brush clearing and such. But I was just watching video clips and stuff on YouTube, and some little thing come up, an interview with J.D. Vance. The interviewer keeps pressing him about the talking about the housing crisis. There's a housing problem, and I hear them talk about this in the UK as well. And housing is the thing. And I mean, maybe I just live in a bubble, but where I'm at, they're demolishing old abandoned houses. And the argument I always heard from people was like, oh, well, we could solve homelessness. There's more abandoned empty houses sitting in this country than there are homeless people. And what exactly is the housing crisis? There's houses all over the place. Lots of places are for sale. If you wanted to sell a house, the crisis is that nobody can afford to buy it. And you're not going to sell it for less than it's worth. And then if you're trying to buy a house, the crisis is all these houses are for sale, but they're way overpriced. And you don't want to buy a house for way more than it's worth. And in between all of this, we're dealing with the worst inflation I have ever seen. No wonder nobody can afford anything. No wonder the prices and the pay are all off kilter and out of balance. No wonder. So what really is the crisis? It's not that we don't have enough houses. The lady's argument was ultimately something to the effect of if there's, we need to build houses. People are trying to build houses, and why can't we build houses? They're making it sound like that's the crisis. And it's like, I don't think that's the crisis. And she says, well, but like 40% of the people that do the building the houses are Hispanic, and oftentimes they're undocumented workers, and isn't that going to be an economic impact? But I'm like, wait, let's take it back first. Why are we building houses when we're demolishing houses? We got empty ones standing. But let's take a look at a recent example in New York. The mayor of New York City imposed a 2-year rent freeze. And rent control is the thing you'll hear when you talk to anyone from New York City, or if you are paying attention to, squatters, or if, anything to do with tenement living or, apartment life in New York, you're going to hear about rent control and the fact that the city will say that the landlords are not allowed to spike the rent. And that sounds on its face like a good thing, but business-wise, it's actually pretty terrible. And, don't get me wrong. I've had some pretty greedy ass landlord behavior happen to me too. It's a balance. It's a comprehensive source of problem. The crisis does not have a singular cause. It's kind of the same thing as with Medicare for all. You could probably actually implement something like that, but what you would have to do is you would have to put your hand on the neck and balls of both the private medical industry, hospitals and doctors, the ones that are charging the insurance, and they overcharge because they know that the insurance will pay it. And then you've got the insurance companies who are charging the shit out of all of their people and then denying half or more of the claims. Nobody's getting what they're paying for. Well, the reason they're denying the claims is because the hospital is overcharging. When they do pay the claims, they pay whatever the overcharged amount is, or the hospital overcharges so they can negotiate down to something that's quote unquote more reasonable. So it seems like the real issue has more to do with all parties involved. How do you solve that? How do you get all parties involved to, stop doing what they do? I guess you could change some laws or something, but so it's the same kind of thing with housing. Like, I know that every single year, with the inflation value, they find an excuse to raise the value of the property, even though my property value should be going down because of how little I actually do with it. The house is not in great shape. The property is largely overgrown. There's a bunch of junk and shit just sitting out. And yet every year there's a 10 to 15% increase in how much the house is valued at and the property. Therefore, a 10 to 15% increase in property tax amount every single year. Meanwhile, the purchasing power of the dollar, that is to say the inflation as a percentage, is also going up, although I don't know if it's quite going up that much. But so then the other thing is that there are times when the currency value and the assessed value of the capital are not aligned. And it's not really good for the government to be stepping in and regulating that either. But the fact is, the only reason we're really dealing with it like that is that there are so many issues with the inflation, the stimulus, the economic impact of the pandemic, all of that stuff going back, that is, in a lot of ways, the root cause of the crisis is the economic destruction. And the fact that nothing's recovering. No, the Great Reset is not going to fix any of these problems. So it's just interesting like that. And, when it comes to like homeless people in empty houses, I know for sure, just, locally, we had at one point, somebody finally realized that we had a 1% homelessness rate in our city, that the people, all the folks that like to think that they do good things for folks and, no, everyone was just ignoring it. They're just, you just know that just every other corner that you pass, there's going to be somebody sitting there with a sign or a shopping cart. Until finally they were like, holy shit, they're like, how many homeless people do we have documented? Oh, the city's got about 300 some. And they're like, yo, we have about 30,000 people in the city. That is 1%. How are you going to have 1% of your population homeless? Well, the thing is, these folks are not homeless on account of fell on bad times. They're homeless on account of drug problems and mental illness. And the mental illness and drug problems are things that the government has shuttered. And this is both parties. Both parties have shuttered facilities. We don't have mental health facilities that, folks can go to if you don't have a good job with nice insurance. If you have such bad mental health that you can't keep a good job long enough to get decent insurance, what are you supposed to do? You need it more than anyone else. Those are the social services the government should be offering that they cut. You can eliminate most of your homeless problem by eliminating the mental illness and helping, well, not eliminating, but treating, helping people find ways to move through or, gain assistance in ways that they can, we have group homes and stuff, but what kind of therapy do we have? What kind of help do we have? As far as the housing market goes, I mean, look, I own my property because my parents went into debt for it. When they passed, I used the life insurance to pay off the mortgage and it became mine. And I'm not putting liens against it. I'm not doing anything that can cause me to risk this place. And as far as people not having a spot, don't be so happy about rent freezes, because every time a rent freeze happens or anything where there's a control on the rent, the landlords are just as likely to not fix up a place and not re-rent it once you move out, which means that there are less apartments. So there's a lot of things that are being done that are actually damaging, that are causing the crisis. And there's other things that could be changed that could alleviate other parts of the crisis until things back off enough that it's really not much of a crisis anymore. For some reason, everybody acts like it's such a confusing topic. I think they know the solutions exist and they can do these things, but I think that it doesn't really win elections and gain campaign finance donations, which is another area of a problem that needs to be all parties involved are the problem kind of thing that needs to be worked out. But obviously, when the people that are making the laws that would govern such things are also part of the problem, it's kind of hard to get them to do anything about it either. But it's just so hilarious to me. All of these different conversations about these different crises we're having. And it's like, look, man, it's pretty obvious the things that are going wrong. People aren't being allowed to change it, or people are refusing to change it. They cannot complain about the problem when it becomes a problem. So many things can be fixed if people just get their head out of their ass. Anyways, that's all for this video. Everything else I do today is pretty much going to be outdoor progress.